Also on YouTube, GHOne TV, on our website, GHOne TV/livestream. Also on our Facebook page is GHOne TV. My name is Abena Owusu-Nyamiche. Here are the headlines. Bolga Central MP calls for the resignation of the Inspector General of Police over the escape of suspects at the Kumasi Circuit Court. Meanwhile, members of the Delta Force, 13 of them who broke out of custody, have turned themselves in to the police. We'll bring you some business where the city appears to experience some good fortunes, but this morning we asked, how sustainable is this appreciation? In sports, reigning Olympic and London Marathon champion Jemima Samgong fails drag test. On the international front, U.S. carries out missile strike against Syrian air base in response to a suspected chemical weapons attack on a rebel-held town. You're welcome to the program. Here's our first story. The Member of Parliament for Bolga Central is calling for the resignation of the Inspector General of Police, David Apietu, over the Delta Force rampage at the Kumasi Circuit Court. The Bolga Central MP, Isaac Adungu, says the magnitude of the security breach at the court depicts incompetence on the part of the IGP.
Well, it cannot be too early. It is a very serious breach of security protocol for anybody to be able to free even one individual in a court, not to talk about 13 people in the court.
Shouldn't the chap in charge of Ashanti region rather be dealt with? Because he has all those people under
Where
his
does the
command.
buck stops?
The buck stops with the man at the very top.
Definitely. So if you are presiding over this, Delta Force, Invisible Force everywhere, and it's now gone to the level. In fact, at some point, the violence was even at the presidency.
Do you think the IGP should step aside?
If I were him, I would simply say the job is bigger than I can. Because to then breach security protocol in the court, one of the most important human resource to this country is our judiciary. Members of the bar, members of the bench. And for them not to be safe, I doubt what an IGP is doing. I doubt it. If you can't protect the judge, you think you can protect the ordinary citizen on the streets?
What kind of signal will it send if he is removed?
He himself should be resigning. And the signal will be that the president is very serious about security. The president is very serious about people not sleeping on the job. The president would not countenance incompetence and will not countenance any mediocrity.
Now, the members of the Delta Force who escaped from custody yesterday have turned themselves into the police. The suspects who were arraigned before a Kumasi Circuit Court escaped after other members of the group invaded the court and set them free. The group members were angered by the judge's ruling to keep them in police custody for 2 weeks. Earlier, the police arrested 8 members believed to have aided in their escape. And here are excerpts of a statement. That's what you have on your screen now. The statement issued by the police in the Ashanti region on that escape of the Delta Force members. We are taking you live now to the Ashanti region to speak to the police on this development. We're finding out the latest on this. So we will be bringing you live pictures from Kumasi, where we will speak to DCOP Kenny Aboa. He is the Ashanti Regional Police Commander. Good to have you. Good to have you, sir. Thank you very much. We know that the 13 people have turned themselves in. For now, what would do you have to say to the public? A lot of people.
They were saying police will not put them before court. So now if police is putting them before court, then we should pray that something happens. And fortunate for them and unfortunate for the Ashanti Regional Police Command, what they were praying for happened. But God, who is always on the right side of man, came to our aid, and now all the 13 have reported and they are now in custody. We will prove to all and sundry that we are capable of handling the Ashanti region and that no criminal is above the law. Any criminal will be dealt with as the laws of the Republic of Ghana dictates. It's very unfortunate that they were able to use this restricted door leading to the circuit court judges' room to escape. We've learned our lessons. I don't think such a thing has happened in any part of the world before, more so in the Republic of Ghana. Some of us, we've been in the service for decades. There's no precedence, but it is very good it has happened. We've learned our lessons, and we are going to improve upon our performance, even not going to improve. You yourself, as members of the media, can attest to the fact that this morning when you came in, things have changed security-wise. And we will continue to improve upon it to assure Asanteman that, yes, your officers in the region are capable. Ghana, your officers in the region, both junior officers and senior officers, are capable of handling the region.
Let's now have a conversation with a legal practitioner, private legal practitioner, lawyer Martin Pegbu on this. Good to have you, sir. So now we understand the suspects have turned themselves in. What will happen? Will they have to be sent back to court for a retrial?
Exactly so, yes. They'll have to be sent back to court for the trial to continue, and then justice will be done. As for the arrest, the fact that there's been rearrested, that in itself is not a conviction. You see, in the middle of all this, what the prosecution need to do is that they have to make the prosecution swift. We shouldn't let this case be bedeviled by the usual adjournments. You see, it would be good that perhaps they try it from day to day so that the trial can come to an end quickly, then we get closure. Because we see that this case has really brought us into a lot of disrepute. It's really embarrassed the whole nation. So let's have it tried quickly, then we will know what the outcome will be, then there will be closure.
Indeed, some people have described what happened yesterday as an unthinkable. A court was invaded. How does the laws of our land view such a development?
The court takes a very grave exception to such conduct, okay? That the citizens would invade the court and seek to use brute force, okay, rather than to let the rule of law apply. Indeed, apart from the charges that these accused persons are already facing, those who undertook such conduct have committed a set of different crimes altogether. Generally, apart from destroying public property, okay, there is also contempt of court. And I'm sure now contempt of court has played in the media. Because what they did constitutes a grave interference with the administration of justice. And they've really prejudiced the case. They have shown that they will not let the rule of law prevail, but rather it will be a rule of brute force, which is untenable, okay? We have moved on, we are ruled by law, and so the law should work. If you are not happy with a ruling made by a judge, you appeal, okay? Yes. Or even they could have even come back subsequently and then reapply to the judge to vary the terms, you see. So with this, they've committed, those who helped the accused to escape have committed contempt of court. They've also, I understand there was some damage there, so damage of public property, obstructing public officers, okay, and so on. I'm sure there are about 6 or so offenses that these persons have committed.
But for the people who invaded the courts, for now, we've heard nothing as to whether they've been picked up or not. What does the Constitution say on this?
My understanding is that they were arrested, 8 of them. That's what was stated in the graphic today. Today's edition of Daily Graphic, page 3. They said they arrested 8 of those persons who helped the accused persons to escape. In terms of the Constitution, as I stated earlier, the laws of contempt, yes, okay, are what they have breached by going into the court to invade the court. But apart from that, also we have the Criminal Offences Act, which is the main criminal law statute in this country. And that's where the matter of obstructing court proceedings, okay, is a crime. That is where the distraction that they cause would amount to this unlawful damage. And also, that is where the obstructing the police, okay, would also amount to an offense. So most of the, and then the assault, okay, those who got beaten and all those things, they are all offenses under the Criminal Offences Act.
We are grateful for your time with us. Lawyer Martin Pebu is a private legal practitioner. We are still staying on the subject, and the chairman of the National Peace Council, Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante, has condemned the Delta Force attack on the Kumasi Circuit Court, describing it as an affront to the rule of law. Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante said the executive powers of the president must be reduced to minimize the excessive political control over security agencies to enable them discharge their duties without fear or favor. He spoke to Kafuide on GH Today.
As far as I'm concerned, this is an unfortunate situation undermining the rule of law in this country. Because, I mean, we all believe that if we are seeking justice, the only place where we will seek the justice is to go to the courts and for the courts to do justice to our grievances and to concerns. I'm told that the whole thing started with a group of people calling themselves Delta Force, attacking a security coordinator in Kumasi, ostensibly because this person did not contribute anything towards the election of the NPP. This led to some arrest. The police did their investigation under the rule of law, and when they did that investigation, the only thing they needed to do was now to push the thing to the courts. My concern has to do with the rule of law in our country. Because, I mean, without law and order, development will never happen. Now, what is happening here is undermining our democracy and undermining the rule of law. And I do believe that the sooner we act on these things and bring people to book, the better. There's too much executive power in this country, and it is not the doing of any president. It is the Constitution, and that's why the constitutional review thing must be looked at carefully. I mean, I believe that the current Speaker of Parliament has written on this too much executive power. There is the need for us to put in place checks and balances, and for example, the police. The IGP and the authorities that should maintain law and order should be a political free institution in such a way that they will be able to act and do what they need to do. Otherwise, we're going to have a situation where I'm going to feel that, listen, I depend upon the executive for my daily bread, so I have to be very careful when I'm acting.
Now, the Ghana Bar Association has expressed shock at the development. In a statement, the GBA said it condemns in no uncertain terms this blatant disregard for orders of a duly constituted court of law and the attack on the judge in the discharge of her duties. The statement goes on to say that it is an affront to the independence of the judiciary and an attack on the rule of law. I will bring in you excerpts of that statement now, and it says such glorification of violence, dastardly acts and threat to our judiciary cannot be tolerated or allowed under our democratic dispensation. It is totally unacceptable under whatever pretense to disobey orders of the courts, attack or threaten to attack the person of the judge, thereby endangering the peace of our country. The GBA notes that any system that allows an individual, group of persons or institutions to disobey orders made by a court of competent jurisdiction with impunity undermines independence of the judiciary, creates room for anarchy, chaos and lawlessness. This certainly has no place under the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. And the statement goes on to say the Bar Association therefore calls on the Inspector General of the Police to immediately rearrest the 13 persons ordered to be remanded, cause a thorough investigation of the incident to ensure that all persons who played any role whatsoever in the attack on the court are arrested, duly charged and prosecuted. They also call on the Minister of Interior to, as a matter of urgency, take steps to ensure the immediate disbandment of the Delta Force and all other vigilante groups that have sprung up in our country. We also call on all well-meaning Ghanaians to condemn this resort to violence and the flagrant disobedience of the court orders. The bar finally wishes to emphasize that an independent judiciary is the backbone of the rule of law, a judiciary that is protected against all forms of intimidation and interference. So still staying on that incident in Kumasi, the attack by the Delta Force on the Kumasi Circuit Court, the Minister for Interior, Ambrose Derry, has given a strong indication that members of that vigilante group affiliated to the New Patriotic Party who raided the Kumasi Circuit Court and freed some suspects will be arrested and brought to book. We know that they've been rearrested. Now, he said other security agencies will be engaged if necessary to clamp down on the group and ensure that justice prevails. He was speaking at an emergency press conference in Accra, and he warned that the perpetrators that it will be in their own interest to resubmit themselves to the police.
I have said repeatedly that if you commit an offense, we shall arrest you, investigate the matter, and send the matter to court. Those 3 steps have been complied with in the massacre. When we send you to court, we are then within the range of the court. Now, the court demanded leaving the court without going to send the remand. Again, it falls within our remit, and we have declared here and now that we shall pursue them and arrest them and bring them back to court.
So that was the words of the Interior Minister Ambrose Derry somewhere last night after the incident. There was an emergency press conference. A lot has happened within the last 15 or so hours after this incident. We can now engage security expert Adib Sani. He has joined me in the studio. Good to have you. And looking at the developments after the attack, the emergency press conference, the rearrest, some people turned themselves in. Let me take your views on that.
Well, in Ghana, we seem to have an intrinsic problem. We are more like firefighters. Usually, we, for years on end, consistently, either deliberately or inadvertently, and more disturbingly, negligently ignore very critical security issues until they spiral out of control. Then we start running helter-skelter, holding meetings left, right, center. This is quite disturbing, and it's only a clear indication of how deep a slumber we have been when it comes to security for the past years. As a matter of fact, recently I approached the head of an MDA about the provision of security infrastructure, and he told me categorically security is not a priority. So I tell him, you wait for things to go wrong before you start giving credence to security. That has been the problem. This is something that has happened for years on end, and I'm not in any way surprised. And I see people making a fuss out of it and getting petulant all over the issue. But from where I sit and from the information I have personally gathered, the research I have done, this has always been a security threat and has been underlined for some time now, and it boggles my mind. The extent of work the BNI, the national security, the military intelligence, the police intelligence is doing to manage this scourge. Because so far as I'm concerned, there was intelligence information suggesting that there's a group which intended attacking the national, the regional security coordinator. He was warned, as a matter of fact. He went to the office, but no security was provided. Come to think of it, I don't need a rocket scientist to tell me that we're sending these guys to the court, and it is highly likely we might have their comrades come around to at least disrupt the court process. But what happened? No form of security.
The police say they were overwhelmed, and if you know the Ashanti region, Kumasi, where the circuit court is and where the regional security, the police headquarters is just a few minutes drive, and they say they were overwhelmed. They didn't expect these guys to invade the court.
I am a friend of the police, and I have a soft spot for the police. But truth be told, there is no justification for their inaction. I am not shocked by the attack of the Delta forces on the court, but what I'm gobsmacked about is the inaction of the police. Because, you know, it is expected. We have intelligence that they pick on the ground. So what is it? Is it negligence? Is it incompetence? Someone needs to answer for what is going there. That notwithstanding, it raises some very legitimate questions, and I hope and pray that this would be the last time we're talking about this.
Apologies have been offered. Are they enough for you?
Let us go beyond the apologies. I mean, it's nonsensical, excuse my language. The right things would have to be done. Let us admit, first of all, that we lack the plan, we lack the strategy. In the past, we have been asleep. Now we've woken up. Let us go back to the drawing board. And I have suggested on many different occasions, let us put a body together that is interdisciplinary in nature, made up of law enforcement, psychologists, legal experts, civil society organizations, and even politicians to put together a roadmap, a strategy that is aimed at, if not completely curbing them, but to manage it to a very large extent. Because this is a high national security threat, believe it or not.
And people are calling for the head of the IGP, the Ashanti Regional Police Commander, and even the National Security and the Interior Minister.
Well, it is not in my place to say who should go or who should stay. But I can tell that the police on this occasion have failed the people of Ghana, and it is important that they put their house together and think of ways we can manage this scourge. Because
but do you think those calls are justified? The calls for them to resign?
Well, it can't be justified, but I think it's important we exercise some restraint and probe further into what might have caused all this. But I was reading a report just last night, and it was on arms proliferation. And according to the report, because of the crisis in North Africa, because of the crisis in Libya and South Sudan and other countries around that area, there's excess guns that came about as a result of the arms proliferation. And gradually, these weapons, because of the excess nature there, are finding their way down to sub-Saharan Africa. And if we are not careful, it might fall into the hands of these militia groups, and we might have a more serious and more complex situation in our hands if adequate measures is not put on the ground to deal with it. But let me also state and emphatically that it should go beyond the arrests. I mean, the arrest is the most basic, elementary way of dealing with this situation. It's important we look beyond that.
You heard the Interior Minister speak. What do you make of his posturing, and how do you expect him to handle these crises?
Well, everybody has condemned it. The Interior Minister has condemned it. The National Security Minister has condemned it. Even the #1 gentleman of the country has condemned it. So this should present a unique opportunity to law enforcement, who hitherto have expressed worry of the fact that there's been some kind of political interference in the way they dispense justice, especially through the courts. But this is a wake-up call. Everybody should have his or her hands on deck. Let us deal a blow to them. Let us deal with it beyond the politics that usually comes with it. The bickering is just too much. We have a problem. Deal with it. This is unbridled, broad daylight criminality, and it should be seen as such. And the day a law enforcement officer becomes compromised politically, that day you cease to be a professional.
Did you agree with calls for the military to be unleashed on these vigilante groups?
They are not bigger than the military. I mean, they are not bigger than the police. The police can do a good job.
But they haven't shown enough muscle yet.
That is why we need to know what the problem is. Because just this morning, I was on a sister station with a police spokesperson from Ashanti region, and he seemed not to know what is happening. You know, when asked about the vigilante, the Delta Force, he seemed not to know anything about them. They asked if he knows them. He says no. They asked if they've picked any intelligence on the ground as to their number. He said no, making it look like they are mysterious, ghostly figures. Meanwhile, they are there, they exist, they operate in society. So it's important they put their house in order, they harness their relationship with the communities in which they operate. So people will be willing to give out information. But the culture of impunity festering in our society is becoming quite worrying.
Adib, thank you very much for joining us. Adib Sani is a security expert. You're watching Newsroom on GHOne TV. We'll be back shortly.
Two guests, one host, forming a panel of 3 lawyers. Each week, discussing relevant legal topics.
As soon as the court grants the adoption order, that child is no longer the child of the natural parent.
There isn't a single text in our law books which would come close to forcing a kid in his mature age to take care of his parents.
The gossips. Yeah. You've heard it's baseless. You move on from house to house discussing it. They can sue you for defamation.
If you go to office and you don't work, when is the end of the month? Feel shy. Don't go to the bank, please.
Some people actually sign prenups at the wedding ceremony. Actually, they sign it first and then they sign the certificate. What is this?
Law Express. Be empowered.
It is often said that women don't like sports. Well, there is some truth to that. But it doesn't stop women from cheering and jeering when players are on the field. My name is Nana Banamwa, and I bring you cheers with a bevy of articulate, beautiful, intelligent, and very entertaining ladies. We'll be talking through all the sports, from the most beautiful goal to the best player and the worst player. It is all on Cheers on this channel every Saturday morning.
Cheers is brought to you by Style Up, by Gandor Cosmetics, Lifestyle Gallery,
Fifi Beauty Center, and Yumvita, a delicious way to grow.
PRT wants to increase transportation fares. They want the minister to increase transportation fare. Do you agree with them?
Well, I'm agree with them. But we are suffering. Serious. It was so unsupport. You see, you have to increase our fare for us. Because if you work, we can't get anything to home. Our children, our wives are suffering for this thing, for school fees. You know, so they don't us. You see, so we have to increase our fare for us so that we become an theoretics. So we beg the government to see everything for us, because now how the work is, how our work be done, it was so lucrative of the stimulus.
This is Newsroom on GHOne TV with me, Apina Owusu-Nyameche. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Bolga Central MP calls for the resignation of the Inspector General of Police over the escape of suspects at the KMA court. Meanwhile, 13 members of the Delta Force have turned themselves in. In business, the city appears to experience some good fortunes. We ask how sustainable this is. And in sports, reigning Olympic and London Marathon champion Jemima Samgang fails drug test. On the international front, U.S. carries out missile strike against Syrian air base in response to suspected chemical weapons attack. The Electricity Company of Ghana has disconnected power supply to the Achim Sankobinase Chips compound in the Etiwa district of the Eastern region over an accumulated debt worth 4,500 cedis.
The disconnection, which was done by the Kede district branch of the ECG, plunged the health facility into total darkness despite government directive to ECG not to disconnect essential institutions, which include health facilities. The situation has compelled nurses at the facility to keep essential drugs, which requires refrigeration, in refrigerators of the chief of the town. The power cut has also affected water supply to the Chips compound because the only water facility available depends on electricity to pump water into the reservoir which supplies the health facility. Apart from these, nurses accommodated in the Chips compound have no option than to sleep in darkness. A nurse at the facility told GHOne TV under anonymity that the health facility is cash-strapped due to non-payment of one-year claims by the National Health Insurance Authority, hence the inability of the health facility to pay its bills. The Achim Sankobinase Traditional Council, worried by the development, has raised about 2,000 cedis for part payment of the bill for power to be restored. Linguist to the chief of Sankobinase, Ochiame Yao Asiedu, told GH1 News government must intervene to ensure that grants due the health facility are provided to carry out administrative functions.
Let's have a short conversation with the PRO for the Eastern Region's Electricity Company of Ghana, Mary Eshan. Thank you for joining us, madam. What has been the arrangement with this facility, the Chips compound, such that at this point you'd have to cut supply?
Thank you and good afternoon to your viewers. With regards to the Chips compound in Sankobinase in Kede district, per our record, the Chips compound is a private entity. It does not fall under government MDA. Now, with what you said about the government directive to not disconnect sensitive institutions, that particular Chips compound does not fall under that institution. Since it's a private institution, we cannot allow them to enjoy that government directive. And therefore, if they owe, we must go for our money, and if they refuse to pay, definitely we have to disconnect and then take our money.
And so this particular Chips compound is run by a private person and not government?
Yes, please. Yes, please. They did not make any arrangement to be moved from a private entity onto a government entity, so therefore we cannot give them that benefit.
How long has this been? Them not paying their bills, how long?
For this particular one, it's about 10 months. 10 months now, and it amounts to 4,500 Ghana cedis.
All right. Thank you very much. Mary Eshan speaks for the Eastern Region's Electricity Company of Ghana. We can now move on and do some other stories here on Newsroom. The Ghana chapter of the Junior Chamber International is collaborating with the Ministry of Youth and Sports and the National Youth Authority to develop a 10-year national volunteering strategy. This came to light when the JCI paid a courtesy call on the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, at the Flagstaff House.
The 10-year National Volunteering Strategy, dubbed Active Citizens Campaign, is modeled on the National Youth Policy. It is aimed at reigniting the spirit of volunteerism in the Ghanaian youth. President of the Ghana chapter of the Junior Chamber International made this known while visiting the Vice President at the Flagstaff House.
January this year, JCI Ghana launched the Active Citizens Campaign, and this campaign basically is looking at how to empower young people in the area of patriotism, that we should do everything possible as young people to take toll of our nation, to drive it forward, to build it as we want it to be.
The delegation, led by the International Vice President of the Junior Chamber International, Reem Abdul Hadi, praised Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia for the active role he continues to play in helping the youth take active part in nation building. She also commended government for its youth-friendly policies.
We're really very proud of JCI Ghana for all the work that they have been doing and the impact that we have been seeing. We've been learning a lot from their methodology and the way they are implementing projects on the ground.
The Vice President then echoed the need to develop young leaders for national development. He also commended the JCI for its efforts at empowering young people over the years.
For us in Ghana, we know basically that the youth is really the future, and to a large extent the present, and so we want to do everything that we can to empower the youth, so that they can deliver. We rely a lot on the youth.
JCI is a non-profit organization of young active citizens aged between 18 and 40 years who are engaged and committed to creating meaningful impact in their communities through volunteerism. Founded over 100 years ago, the Ghana chapter was established 11 years ago.
You're watching Newsroom live on GHOne TV. Let's do some business stories. The Ghana Oil Company Limited, GOIL, has commissioned a 13.5 million litre bunkering facility at the Takoradi Port. Speaking at its commissioning, the board chairman of GOIL, Professor William Asumani, disclosed that the facility, which cost $1 million, was solely funded by GOIL from its internally generated funds.
Board chair of GOIL also indicated that the company has begun dispensing marine gas oil from its ultra-modern 4 million litre bunkering facility at the Sekondi Naval Base.
The project comes with a modern separator system to ensure that every effluent from the tank farm is properly treated. Not only that, mindful of the safety issues, we have installed an automatic firefighting system with foam and water as part of the project.
The Chief Executive Officer of GOIL, Patrick Akoli, commended the contractors, Murray and Robert from South Africa, for delivering on time. He said the project will revitalize the Takoradi port and reignite the socio-economic activity in the metropolis. He, however, said the project was not without challenges as it could not begin as scheduled, creating doubt about its viability.
The quality of the facility is of the highest international standards in terms of storage, distribution, and safety.
After suffering a major decline post-December 7th polls, the strength of the cedi has seen a modest rebound towards the end of the first quarter of 2017. As at yesterday, the cedi sold at 4 cedis 19 pesos to the dollar, but on Wednesday it sold at 4.16 to the dollar. However, overall, it has seen a steady decline from a high of 4.5 last month. And so we are bringing you graphics of how the cedi has performed in this first quarter of 2017. That's what you have on your screen right now. And so the trend in the cedi depreciation thus far in 2017, it reflects both external and domestic pressures. A rebound in investor confidence due to the 2017 budget statement with a clear fiscal direction following last year's overruns. And the issue of domestic bonds, which attracted the FX inflows, notably the recent 15 years and 7 years bonds issues, which raked in more than $2 billion. And so the cedi has therefore recovered significantly against the US dollar to a year-to-date appreciation of 0.11% as at the close of day 6th April 2017. That was yesterday. And today is April 7th. To help us understand all those figures is Courage Kinsley Mati. Good to have you in the studio. He's with Data Bank Research. Tell us, what is accounting for this performance of the cedi in the first quarter?
Well, you started very well by mentioning the fact that the cedi's behavior explains both two key factors, one being domestic pressures and the other being external headwinds. The domestic pressures emanated from last year's fourth quarter. You recall that the cedi was quite stable until November, when at a point the then finance minister announced that we are likely not to meet our deficit target and likely to end about 7% for the year instead of 5.3%. Then the elections were also approaching fast, and then there were a lot of risk-averse investors moving away from cedi assets because of the election uncertainty. That emanated some pressures on the cedi, and because of that, the cedi started declining. At that point in November, it had lost only 4%, but between November and end of the year 2016, it lost 9.65%, just because of the elections pressures. Now, we went into 2017, and then there was this announcement of fiscal overruns and undisclosed expenditures, and that just triggered another apprehension on the market, and the cedi continued to depreciate faster, and then continued until where we had a situation where by February, foreign investors also started anticipating an increase in the US interest rates. And because of that, a lot of capital that normally will flow to emerging markets like Ghana redirected back towards the US to take position in higher interest-bearing assets. And because of those movements, the cedi suffered. So those were the domestic and external factors that explain the cedi's depreciation. But in recent times, especially after the budget that gave a clear signal of what the government is seeking to do, restoring fiscal sustainability and restoring macroeconomic stability, and how they seek to achieve that. There's been some rebound in investor confidence, and we've seen that. Now the government capitalized on that and issued some bonds, started with some 3-year bonds, and then lately we saw a 7-year and a 15-year bond, which together raked in over $2 billion. And that is expected to boost the reserves at the Bank of Ghana, because as at end of February, the reserves was about 3.7 months of import cover. But with this new inflow, there's a lot of confidence that it could push it up about 4 months of import cover. So there's so much confidence on the market, given the supply on the market, and so there's no much rush for dollars, and so that's just helping the cedi.
And Courage, one can say that we've seen this before. We can easily go back to 2015. Yeah. How sure are we that this isn't an artificial appreciation?
Well, in the case of the 2015, what happened was that there was an IMF review which triggered some positive sentiment, and then the central bank capitalized on that and sold dollars onto the market, and that was artificial, and the cedi regained some strength sharply. In this particular case, there's also a rebound in confidence, but that confidence is not being aided by selling of dollars onto the market. In any case, at the last MPC, the then governor even said that they are buying some dollars out of the market because there's so much supply. So what we are seeing right now, and again, to actually tell that it's not so much artificial, at the close of February, based on the statistics released by the Bank of Ghana, we actually had a trade surplus, meaning we had more inflows from our export revenue than we spent importing. And so fundamentally, there's every reason to believe that the cedi is fundamentally anchored. What had caused the depreciation had been loss of confidence because of the fiscal slippages. And so that confidence is what is retaining. And if it is sustained because of government policies and the direction it will keep giving, then we should see it helping the cedi further.
And how long are we going to see this appreciation? And you mentioned sustenance. Can it be sustained?
Well, speaking directly to appreciation, it is not something we should expect to continue. because essentially as a country we run a current account deficit. Once you run a current account deficit, there should be some amount of depreciation. But what we are seeking to see and we expect and we are confident about is some stable level, because the volume of FX supply on the market right now is quite significant. That can restore some stability. And so we think that the central bank will manage the volume of FX supply on the market so as to restore some stability. And so we think that whilst appreciation should not be expected continuously, what we expect and what is sustainable from what we are seeing is some stable level.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That was Courage Kingsley Mate. He's an economist with Data Bank Research. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back after this break.
For 2 months, building in this country is too difficult.
Don't worry, the National Investment Bank We Pay for Your Dream scheme can help you finance your building project.
Listen, NIB gave me cement, iron rods, roofing sheets, and other materials to finish my building.
NIB can also help you purchase your home appliances, your mobile phones, and your motorbikes.
You don't even need to have an NIB account to benefit from the NIB We Pay for Your Dream scheme. No.
Just visit any NIB branch with a valid national photo ID card. And the best part is, all purchased products are at no interest.
Call NIB now on 050-145-1050.
National Investment Bank. Your business is our business.
If you are a fool, you can be 1,000 years, you remain one. Particularly if you are the type of fool that has no capacity to learn. You have that problem. If you are even 15, 18 years old, and depending on your experiences of growing up to that young age, you might know what an 80-year-old man will not know.
Thank you for staying with us. We can now bring you some international news.
Thousands of South Africans have gathered in the streets of Durban, Pretoria, Johannesburg and other cities to march against the presidency of Jacob Zuma, led by the main opposition Democratic Alliance Party, workers' unions, civil society groups, students, politicians and the general public have come out in their numbers to support the call for Zuma to be impeached.
It's time that we get a new leader who actually knows what being a president is about, who can actually fulfill his presidential obligations. Because what Zuma is doing is just, it's not right.
South Africa does not belong to Zuma.
After the recent cabinet reshuffle that cost 5 ministers their jobs, including the favorite finance minister, Pravin Gordhan. Meanwhile, hundreds of veterans of the ANC's armed anti-apartheid struggle and members of the ruling party's youth wing have gathered outside its headquarters in Johannesburg in a show of support for President Jacob Zuma. And now to the U.S., where it has carried out a missile strike against a Syrian airbase in response to a suspected chemical weapons attack on a rebel-held town. 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles were fired from 2 U.S. Navy ships in the Mediterranean, killing 6 people. It is the first direct U.S. military action against forces commanded by Syria's president. The Kremlin, which backs Bashar al-Assad, has condemned the strike. It comes just days after dozens of civilians, including many children, died in a suspected nerve gas attack in the town of Kar Shankun in Idlib province.
Next, we'll bring you sports news.
The new CAF president, Ahmed, has cast doubt over his long-term future as the leader of Africa's football governing body, insisting he is even uncertain if he will run for a second term. Ahmed completely ruled out a third term in office as he remained uncertain on a second. I don't even know if I will do a second mandate, but 3 mandates, it is impossible. Ahmed ruled out a third term in an interview with VOA Africa. I will not, he insisted. The 57-year-old man who defeated long-serving president of the Federation, Issa Hayatou, in last month's election, insists improving the game on the continent is more important than the number of years he will serve as the leader of the Federation. Reigning Olympic and London Marathon champion Jemima Sumgang is the latest Kenyan athlete to fail a drugs test. The 32-year-old tested positive for banned substance EPO in an out-of-competition test carried out by athletics governing body, the IAF. Sumgang, the first Kenyan woman to win an Olympic gold medal in the marathon, was due to defend her London title on 23rd April. Kenya was last year declared in breach of anti-doping rules, and athletes underwent special testing for Rio 2016. The East African country was deemed non-compliant by the World Anti-Doping Agency but was reinstated before last summer's games. Between 2011 and 2016, more than 40 Kenyan track and field athletes failed doping tests. Sumgang's B sample will now be analyzed and she will face sanctions if that also tests positive. The athletes tested positive for EPO following a no-notice conducted in Kenya.